Hi, welcome to my channel. So today we will create the last part of the series. If you are new and have not seen the previous part, then I will give the link in the description. Also, if you can support me, then buy me a coffee. It will motivate me to bring new content every week. And also, if you are new, please do like and subscribe my channel. And also click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming content. So let's get started. So first, let's start by giving display none to the feed page. Display, and the value will be none. And then give display grid to the main page. So this is the main page, the landing page. Now we will add JavaScript to it. So go to JavaScript file. But before that, you must add script source tag in bottom of the HTML page. So now let's continue with JavaScript. So first give a comment as DOM elements. And then select the main page. Now I'm going to make a variable main page. And in order to select it, let's use query selector method main page. After that, select the login page. So for that, let's create the second variable and again select login page using query selector method. Okay, so now I'm going to create a function which will manage hiding and displaying those two pages. So now insert here a new comment, main page. Now let's create the function. So I'm going to use here ES6 arrow function. So let's create a variable, go to login page and assign to arrow function. So as we said, we will hide the main page and display the login page. So we need here main page dot style dot display equal to none. As for the login page, use again style dot display and make it grid. So now we will select the parent element of those buttons. Middle content class. So now go ahead and select this element and create a variable middle content. And let's select it using query selector method. Now add a class in middle content in login and sign up button. So add here main dash btn and also in login button main dash btn. And now we need to add event listener. Middle content dot add event listener with a click event. And also we need to pass arrow function. So now let's use if statement in which we need to check some conditions. If e dot target dot class list with index number 1 equals to main btn and execute the block of code. So now let's call the function go to login page. So now if we click any of the button, it will take us to login page. So now we will add some login validation and error message. So for that, let's add a new variable. Let's call it btn top. And let's select the class using query selector method. And now down below, attached to it, add event listener. And now let's add a variable input user info. And select the first input element using again query selector method. And then select the second input element. Let's call this variable input password and select it using query selector method. So now we need to use if statement in order to check input field is empty or not. So let's give is input user info dot value not equals to empty string. It means that input is not empty. Then we need to use logical and operator. And we have to check here input password dot value not equals to empty string. So if this condition is true, which means that none of the input is empty, then we need to hide the main page. Therefore, main page dot style dot display with a value none. And also we need to display here the newsfeed page. But at first I'm going to select this element. So create variable newsfeed page and select it using query selector method. After that, I'm going to insert here newsfeed page dot style dot display equals to block. Alright, let's test. Okay, so there is some problem. So let's go and fix this. So I have not given the dot here. This will be dot user info. Alright, so let's check now. So it's working fine. So now we need to take care of the different case. I mean the case where we leave one of the input fields or both of them empty. In order to do that, we have to use statement. So for that we need to hide the main page and display the login page. Give else, go to login page. Alright, that's it. So let's check it. So as you see, everything works fine. So next we will create a model box with some error message if the field is empty. So first let's move these two lines out of the function. So the main page is hidden and the login page is displayed. Okay, so let's start to create the model box in the end of the login page. So first let's comment out as login model. Also give a comment end of login model. So now open a div element with class name login model. So inside of the div elements, we will have two elements. First one is going to be font awesome icons. It will represent X closing button. So I elements with class name FAS FA dash times. As for the second elements, it should be paragraph. Now let's insert here the username and password you enter did not match our records. Please double check and try again. So that's it about the HTML markup. Now let's go ahead and style those elements. At end of login page CSS, let's insert here new comments. Login model. Then select the div element. So first let's give the position as fixed. Then make the top property 11.5 rem. Then give left position 50%. And also we need transform translate with value minus 50%, minus 50%. And then change the background color, make it white. So the model box is positioned. Next we have to customize it. So I'm going to define its width. Let's make it 70 rem. Then create some space inside the box using padding. Let's make it 2 rem. Then give text align center. So now let's give box shadow with a value 0.7 rem, RGBA 0.3. And then change the border radius with a value 0.01 rem, 1 rem. Alright, now let's take care font awesome icons. So let's select it. So let's set its position as absolute and define the top and right property 2 rem. So the icon position in the right way. So now let's increase its font size. The font size 1.3 rem. And also change the color to 868383. And then make the cursor pointer. So with I elements we are done. Now let's customize the paragraph. So let's select it. So I'm going to create a margin with the top 2 rem, then 1 rem on the right side, 0 at the bottom, and 1 rem on the left side. Then increase the font size, make it 1.6 rem, and finally change the color using a 868383. So the model box is customized now, and now we have to make it working. Now let's move back those 2 lines inside the function. Now I'm going to hide model by default. So let's assign it display none. Now let's create a new variable login model and select login model with query selector method. And then inside of the else statement, we need to write login model dot style dot display. We should set it as block. So now click the login button. Okay, so it's working. So now let's make the model box behind the nav bar. So for that, come to class login page nav. Then after box shadow, give z index property with a value 1. Alright, so as you see, the model box is behind the nav bar. So now let's make the X button working. For that, let's create a new variable. Call it model X and then select it using query selector method. Login model I. Then down below, insert a new comment for the login page. Now let's attach to it add event listener with a click event with arrow function. So let's write login model dot style dot display with value none. Alright, next thing we are going to give validation for those inputs. For that, let's create a variable login from btn and select button element using again query selector method. Login dash form dash btn, and now down below attach to it add event listener. We need again a click event and then add arrow function. Okay, so now we need to add classes to input field because currently they don't have any classes. So let's go ahead and assign a class to them. The first one is going to be login user info. As for the second one, let's assign it with login password. After that, let's select both input element. For that, let's create a first variable, login user info, and select the input element using query selector method dot login user info. And then we need to create another variable same as login user. This will be login password, and select the second input element. And now down below, create if statement with the following condition: login user info with a value property not equals to empty string. Then again we need here logical and operator, login password dot value not equals to empty string. So if this condition is true, that means user has inserted something in both input fields. Then we should hide the login page and show the newsfeed page. So login page dot style dot display with a value none. As for the newsfeed, we have to give display as block. Otherwise, if any input or both of them are empty, then we should display the model box error message. So we need here else statement, and at the block of the code, we have to insert login model dot style dot display with the value block. Alright, let's check it if it is working or not. So you see that everything is working perfectly. So now let's work on newsfeed page. We have to add something here. So first of all, let's hide the main page and login page in order to avoid navigating between pages of all the time. So let's go ahead and change the display properties to none. So in feed page, give display property block. Press Ctrl F, search for main page, and assign a display property none. And now let's go ahead and create the HTML markup. So first, let's comment out it as post model. Then open a div element, class name, model wrapper. Next, we need another div with a class name, model. Actually, it should wrap the entire content with the model box. Now let's add another div with a class name, model header. Inside of this div element, we will have two different elements. The first one should be the font awesome icon, which will represent the X closing button. So for that, let's give I element with a class name FAS FA dash times. The second element is going to be button with type button with the text post. Alright, that's it about the model header. Next, we need to create model body. So let's create a div elements with a class name model body. Inside of this div element, we will have image and an input and a font awesome icons. So let's open the div elements, which will be the wrapper of the image. So let's assign it to a class name model img. Then insert an image element. Now let's specify source images user1.jpg. Next, we need an input element with type text. Also, we need a placeholder attribute with the value what's happened. And finally, let's assign a class name model input. After the input, let's assign a font awesome icon, I element, and the class name will be fa-smile. Okay, so with the model body we are done. Now we have to create the last part of the model footer. So for that, open a div and give a class name model footer. So in this part we will have three different font awesome icons and a plus sign. So open a div element which actually wraps all those elements assigned to it, class name model icons. And inside of the div elements, let's insert couple of I elements. Copy and paste this two more times. First one, assign a class name fa dash image. Then in second one, fa dash camera. And the last one is going to be fa dash chart dash bar. And finally, we need a span element to display the plus sign. Alright, that's it about the HTML markup. Now let's style it. So first, let's small the size of the image with it 40. So now let's style with CSS. So first, let's insert here post model comment. So now let's select model wrapper. So I'm going to set position as fixed. Then change the background color. Use here RGBA 000.5. Now give top and left and right and bottom all will be 0. So as you see, the wrapper takes up the entire page. So now let's select the model class. With width 16 and change the background color, make it white. Now set position as absolute. Also now define the top property, set it as 25% and set left property 50%. Also you have to translate with value minus 50% and then again minus 50%. Okay, so that's it about the position of the model. Now let's set border radius. Assign border radius. Let's set it as 1.5 rem. Now let's select the model header. As you know, it has two consist elements. One is font awesome and a button to post. So first of all, Let's give some space with padding 1.5 rem in top and bottom, and then 2.5 rem on left and right side. Then give display as a flex. And now set align item center. And finally, let's create the border at bottom. Assign a value 0.1 rem solid and light gray color EEE. Alright, so that's it about the header. Now we have to customize the individual elements. Let's go ahead and start from the X button. First of all, let's increase the font size. Make it 2.3 em and then change it color to 1AA1F5. And lastly, make the cursor pointer. Now let's select the button and give margin left. And we have to set it as auto. Now set it with it as 8 rem. Then create some space using padding. I'm going to set it as 0.8 rem on top and bottom and 0.5 rem on left and right side. And then change the background color. Use here color 1AA1F5. Also make the text white and increase font size, make it 1.6 rem. Okay, so button and the X button is customized. Now we have to add some more style to it. So change the default border value 0.1 rem, solid 1AA1F5 and give border radius. Let's make it 3 rem. And finally, let's decrease its opacity 0.5. So that's it about the model header. Now let's customize the model body. So now let's select it, the model body. And make it display flex. Also create some space with padding on top 2 rem, 1.5 rem on the right side, 1 rem at the bottom and 1.5 rem at the left side. Okay, now we have to style individually. Let's go ahead and let's start from the image. First, let's clear the image with it from the HTML. And now select its wrapper, model img. Now let's assign the width 4 rem and height with the same value, and also create some space from the right side of the image using margin right with value 1.5 rem. Okay, so that's it about the wrapper. As you remember from the previous cases, we have to define width and height for the image itself. So let's go ahead and select it. We need to set width and height of image as 100%. Also, we need object fit as cover. And then we need a border radius with a value 50%. Okay, so with the image we are done. Next comes an input element. So let's go ahead and select it. First of all, let's define its width. Let's make it 53 rem. And then create some space with padding. On top, 1 rem, then 0 on the right side, 8 rem at the bottom, and 1 rem on the left side. Now change the background color. Let's make it D6, E1, E9. And then change the default border. Let's make it 0.1 rem, solid, and the color will be EEE. Also make it slightly rounded with border radius with a value 1.5 rem. And finally increase its font size, make it 1.6 rem. Alright, so as you can see, input field and the image is looking good. We are almost done. The only thing we need to do is to change its background color. Also change the color of the border once we focus on it. So let's select it. Input element with focus. Then change its background color. Make it white. Also change the border color. Make it 1AA 1F5. So finally we are done with this element. The only element we need to take care of inside of the model body is the icon. I'm going to place at the corner of the input field. So select the icon. And set its position as absolute. Then define the bottom property and assign it a value 3.5 rem. As for the right position, we need to make it 2.8 rem. Also increase the font size to 2 rem. And then change color to 1AA 1F5. So finally we are done with the model body. Now let's style the footer. So select it, model footer. So first let's create some space using padding. Set padding as 0 at the top, then 2 rem at the right, then again 2 rem at the bottom, and finally 8 rem on the left side. So as you see, the position of the icon is changed. We will take care of it soon. Now let's select the wrapper and make it display flex. And then change align items center. Now select the font awesome icons and create some space on the right side using margin right 2 rem. Then let's increase font size to 2.7 rem. And then change the color to 1AA 1F5. So the icons are looking good. Now let's fix smile icon. Come to model, body. Change the bottom to 7 rem. So now it looks good. So let's style the plus sign. So let's select it. So first give margin left with value auto. Then increase the font size to 5 rem. And then I'm going to set width and height both of them as 4 rem. And then create border with a value 0.1 rem solid, and the color will be 1AA 1F5. And now let's give border radius 50%. Also give display property flex, and then change the justify content center. Also change its align items center. Then change the color to 1AA 1F5. Also decrease its opacity 0.5. So with plus sign we are done. Now as you see, the only thing we have to do is to change the bottom position of the smile icon. So change the bottom position to 8.5 rem. Alright, so finally we are done with styling. Now let's add some functionality with JavaScript. So first let's assign to a model display none, and to model wrapper give opacity 0. Opacity 0 and visibility hidden. So now come to JavaScript. So first let's create a variable post btn and select this element using document.querySelector method. Next it's going to be wrapper of model. So create another variable model wrapper and then select its element using again querySelector method. And the third variable will be model itself. Then its element with querySelector method. After here down below, let's insert a new comment, newsfeed page. And then again insert a new comment as post model. So post btn, now add event listener. Type will be click. And also we need here arrow function. Okay, so now we have to display the model. So we need here model.style.display with a value block. As for the wrapper, so first let's create a new class in CSS and call it model wrapper display. So as you know, by default the wrapper class has opacity. So we need here opacity value 1 and visibility visible. So now we need here model wrapper, then we should use class list property, then use add method. We have to add here class model wrapper display, which we have just created. Alright, so if we click this button, then the model box will be displayed and also the entire page will be disabled. Now next we'll give functionality to the closing X button. So for that, let's create a new variable post model X, and then select it using query selector method. Dot model header I. After that, we need to attach to it event listener. So for that, we need here post model X, then add event listener with click event and also with arrow function. Therefore, we need model.style.display equals to none. And also we have to get rid of background. So we need here model wrapper dot class test. Now we need to add method called remove. Now let's specify class name model wrapper display. So everything is working fine. Next we will program these two elements, button and the plus sign. So first let's add the variable the top model post btn, and then add the query selector method. Also add another variable model footer plus with a query selector method model footer span. Down below in here, let's add another variable change opacity parameter x with arrow function. So now add here model post btn dot style dot opacity, which should be equal to x. Then exact same name we need to add for plus sign model footer plus style dot opacity. This should be equal to x. So now let's select the input element. So create new variable model input and select it using query selector method. So down below, attach to it with event listener. So we need here model input and add event listener. Now in this case, we need to use different type of event, that is key press, and then we need arrow function with event object. So this event accused every time when we press the keyboard. So let's use if statement as a condition. We need to insert here a e.target, which is input field dot value not equals to empty string. So if this condition is true, then the input field is not empty. Therefore, we need to increase the opacity. Therefore, we need to call the function change opacity, and as an argument, we need to insert here 1, which again the value of opacity. So everything is working fine. Now we need to do another thing, that is when we remove the text, the opacity of the bottom should be 0. So now let's add an event listener to the input element. So we need to use here model input dot add event listener, in parenthesis add blur with an event object, then give arrow function. So now we need an if statement in which we have to check input field is empty or not. As a condition, we need to add e dot target dot value triple equals to empty string. If this condition is true, therefore we need to call a function change opacity with an argument 0.5. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check it. So now we need to add last thing, is that when the input field is not empty and when we close the model, we need to make it empty, and also we need to decrease the opacity. So for that we need to add here if statement, then as a condition we have to check if model input dot value not equals to empty string. If it is true, then we had to make it empty. So we need model input dot value equals to empty string, and also we have to decrease the opacity. So we need to add change opacity with an argument 0.5. So now let's check again. I fear something. Now close it. And as you see, the input field is empty, the opacity decreases, so everything works fine. Now let's create a sidebar in newsfeed. So let's create the HTML markup. So first let's comment out as a sidebar. Also add a comment end of sidebar. Then open a div element. It should be the wrapper of the sidebar, and with the help of this element, let's assign a class name sidebar wrapper. Next, we need another div element. It will wrap the entire content of the sidebar. So let's assign it a class name sidebar. Next, again open a div element with the class name sidebar header. Then insert in it h2 heading element with text account info, and then create I element with class name fas fa dash times. Alright, so that's it about the header. Next, we have to take care of the username. So open a div element and assign a class name sidebar user. So first thing we will insert here is the image of the user. So let's open another div element which will be the wrapper of the image. assign it a class name, sidebar user image. Next, we need to insert image itself. Specify the path of the image inside of the source attribute. Now let's small the size of the image with image width 40. Beside an image, we will have a plus sign with the span tag. Okay, next we will add user information like name and username, how many followers, stuff like that. So let's create a div element with a class name sidebar user info. Then insert here h4 heading element with the name of the user Dipankar Das. Next we need a paragraph which should be the username. Insert at sign Dipankar01. So now let's open another div element with class name following. Next open p element with a class name following paragraph. So here we have to give number of the following 811 and type here following. Now copy and paste this whole p tag and replace following to followers. And also change the number of followers to 8.8k. Alright, so that's it about the user info. Okay, let me zoom it so you can see better. Alright, next we need to create two different lists. So come to code. Now open a div element and assign a class name sidebar list1. Then insert here UL tag. So overall we will have 5 list items. Which of those will be front awesome icons and text? So let's go ahead and open a li element. It should have followed by the link. Then we need to give I element with class name FAS FA user. Then insert here first list item profile. Now copy and paste this 4 times. And then make some changes. This will be FAR FA list alt. And as for the text, this will be list. So the third one will be FAB FA dash adversal. And the text will be ads. The fourth one will be FAS FA dash chart line. And the text will be analytics. So there will be only 4, no fifth. So now the first list is completed. Now let's create the second one. So open a div element with class name sidebar list2. Then insert here UL element. So in here we will have 3 list item. So let's open an li element. Next we need a link element with subtext, settings and privacy. So let's duplicate this li element twice. Then change the text. So second one will be help center. And the third one will be logout. So that's it about the model. Now let's style it. First of all, let's start with the new comments after the post model sidebar. So let's select sidebar wrapper and set it position fixed. And then make background color little bit dark and assign it RGBA 000.5. Then we need to put all four position top, left, right and bottom to 0. So that's it about the background. Next, let's make the sidebar on the left. So for that, let's select the sidebar itself. So let's go ahead and select it. And we need to set position as fixed. And also we need top and right property 0. Then give with it 38 RAM. As for the height, I need 100 VH viewpoint and also change the background color, make it white, FFF. And then give space with padding 2.5 RAM. And also give box sizing, set it as border box. And then give box shadow minus 0, 0.1 RAM, 0, 0.5. And also give RGBA 000 opacity 0.3. So that's it about the sidebar for now. So let's customize its element. So I'm going to start with a header. So let's select it. Sidebar header. And give display flex. Also center them vertically with align items center. So now let's use padding bottom 1.5 RAM. And finally, let's create the border at the bottom using border bottom 0.1 RAM, solid and the color EEE. So with the header we are done. So I'm going to customize each individual element. So let's start with heading, select it and increase its font size to 2 RAM. Now select the icon. So first of all, we will place the icon to right side. As you already know, we need to use margin left and we have to set it as auto. Then increase its font size, make it 2.5 RAM. And then change the color, make it blue using 1AA1F5. And finally make cursor pointer. So finally we are done with the header. Next move on to next two elements. They are the image and the plus sign. First of all, let's select the wrapper, which is sidebar user I. And then I'm going to place both elements horizontally as one in case of the header. So we need again display flex. Then in order to center them vertically, let's use align item center. And finally create some space with padding top with value 1.5 rem. Next I'm going to style the image. So for that, select its wrapper and set it width and height both of them 4 rem. Next, as you already know, we need to define width and height of the image as well. So let's go ahead and select it. So we need to make width and height both of them 100%. But beside that, we need also object fit with a value cover. And lastly, in order to make image rounded, we need border radius with a value 50%. And finally, I'm going to get rid of HTML with it because we don't need that anymore. Alright, so that's it about the image. So now let's go ahead and move on the next element, which is the plus sign, which is represented by span element. So let's go ahead and select it. First of all, let's use margin left auto. Now make within and height, both of them 3.5 rems. Then increase its font size 5 rem. Then we need to create border 0.1 rem solid and the color will be 1AA1F5. And then make it rounded using border radius 50%. And now use flexbox display flex. Then use justify content center. Also align items center. Then change its color to 1AA1F5. Alright, so we need to change the width and height of the circle. So first of all, come to CSS and change the width and height to 4 rem. So now let's check it. Okay, so now it looks good. So now let's take care of the user info. So first of all, let's select its wrapper, sidebar user info. Then I'm going to create some space using padding 1.5 rem top and bottom, 0 left and right side, and also increase font size, make it 1.8 rem. Now select the heading and create some space at the bottom using margin bottom with value 0.5 rem. Next, select the wrapper class following. I'm going to place both of them side by side. So I'm going to use display flex. And also create some space using padding, make it 1.5 rem top and bottom and 0 on left and right side. Next, let's customize the paragraph. So select them. And increase their font size 1.8 rem. Now use pseudo class called first child. So let's select paragraph pseudo class first child and then assign it margin right with value 2.5 rem. Now let's select span elements and assign it to font weight with the value of bold. Alright, so that's it about this part. Now we have to move on and take care of their two lists. So select the first list, sidebar list 1, and then create border at the bottom with values 0.1 rem solid and the color EEE. Next, select the list itself. Get rid of default bullet with list none. And then add some space with padding 1.5 rem top and bottom and 0 on left and right side. Now select the align element and use your margin button with value 2.5 rem. Okay, so we see some space between the list item. Now we have to make them look good. So now let's go ahead and select the link element. First of all, get rid of default underline using text decoration none. And then increase its font size. Make it 1.6 rem. And also change the color. Use here color 868383, which actually is a gray color. Now select the I element and assign it to margin right with a value 1 rem. Okay, so that's it about the first list. So now go ahead and take care of the second one. So first of all, copy these three class and paste it right here. Now change the side list 1 to 2. This will be 2 and this also will be 2. Now change the value of padding to 3M, top and bottom. So that's it about the sidebar CSS. So now let's add some functionality to it. So the first thing we need to do is to hide the sidebar. So for that, search for sidebar wrapper and then give opacity 0. And also we need visibility hidden. Beside that, we need to move the sidebar to the right. So for that, in sidebar, change the right position value to -30 rem. So now let's come to JS file. So first let's create a variable user and then select the query selector method dot user. Then down below, insert a new comment, sidebar, and address to it a user dot add event listener with a click event and with arrow function. So once we click the user of the sidebar, it should come from right to left position. In order to achieve that, I'm going to create a new class in CSS. Let's call it sidebar display. And set right position 0. Now let's go back to JavaScript file and then select the sidebar, create new variable and select sidebar using query selector method. And then down below, inside of the function, give sidebar dot class list Then we have to use method add, and inside of the parenthesis we have to indicate class name sidebar display. So now let's create a new class in CSS to give visible to the sidebar. Call it sidebar wrapper display. And give opacity 1. Also assign a visibility visible. Then go to JavaScript file again. So now select the wrapper and create a new variable and call it sidebar wrapper. And then select this element using query selector method. And then down below, add to it newly created class. So we need here sidebar wrapper, and then again property class list with the method add, and inside of the parenthesis we need to add the class name sidebar wrapper display. So now if I click the user, it should show. So let's see it's working or not. So it's working perfectly. Now let's add some transition to it, then it will look good. So come to CSS. So in sidebar, give transition, then assign a position right, and also give 0.5 second duration. And also we will use function called cubic bezier in order to give effect nicer. As you know, it takes 4 argument. Insert here 1 0 0 1. And besides that we need to give transition in sidebar wrapper. Let's assign it to it all 0.5 second duration. So let's click OK. See, everything works perfectly. Now let's work in closing button of the sidebar. I mean, once we click on the X button, it should hide the sidebar. So let's go to JavaScript file and select the element and create variable called xbtn. Then select it using query selector method. Then down below, address to it event listener with click event and with arrow function. So in order to hide sidebar, we need to remove class sidebar display. Therefore, we need sidebar.class list.remove and the class name inside of the parenthesis, the exact same we did for the wrapper itself. So copy and paste this line of code and then change the name of the variable. So this will be a sidebar wrapper, and also change the class display, sidebar wrapper display. Alright, so let's check it if X button is working or not. See that the sidebar is gone, so everything works fine. Now let's work on dark mode. So let's go to HTML document down below after the end of div sidebar list 2. Now insert here the new comment dark mode. Then open a div element and assign a class dark dash mode, and inside that give a p element and insert a text dark mode, and then again create a div element, then assign to it a class toggle, and then inside of it create a div and assign a class circle. Alright, so that's it about the HTML. Now let's work on CSS. First of all, let's give a comment as dark mode. Then select a div class toggle. So let's go ahead and select it, set it with it as 4.5 rem. Then I'm going to define height as 1.5 rem. And finally change the background color, make it gray using 777. So now the element is visible. So I'm going to set text and box side by side. So let's select the wrapper, div element, dark mode, assign it a display flex, and then center elements vertically with the align item center. Okay, next, as you see, elements are placed side by side. Next, I'm going to take care of the paragraph. So let's go ahead and select it and create some space in the right side using margin right. Let's set it as 8 rem. Then increase the font size 1.6 rem. And finally change the color, make it gray using 868383. Alright, so that's it about the paragraph. Next I'm going to take care of the button. So let's make the border rounded using border radius with the value 3 rem. And the last thing we are going to do is to create a shadow effect. But in this case, it's going to be inner shadow. So give box shadow. And the value will be inset. Then give 0, 0.2 rem and also 1 rem. And the color will be RGBA 000 0.3. So now select the class circle and set it with it and height as 2 rem. Also change the background color, make it DDD. Now give border radius with value 50%. So now let's give position absolute. So now in order to position the circle according to the parent element, let's assign to toggle position relative. Now let's place the circle in the right way. For that I'm going to set top position as 50%. So then we need left as 0. So in order to set an element vertically, we need transform, then translate, and as the value we have to insert here minus 50%. And finally, let's create a shadow effect. Use box shadow 0, 0.1 rem, 0.3 rem. Then RGBA black color with opacity 0.3. So finally the button is customized. Then the last thing we are going to do is to make it work. So we need to move the circle to right side, and also we have to change its background color. So for that, let's create a new class in CSS. Then we will add this into the JavaScript. So call this class.move. So now we have to define the left position as 2.5 rem. Background color 117 ABB. Alright, it's time to write some JavaScript. So let's go ahead and select the JavaScript file. First of all, I'm going to select both elements. I'm in toggle and the circle. So create new variable and select this element using query selector method. Then we need to select circle. So let's create the variable circle and select it using query selector method. So down below, let's get a new comment. Dark mode. So select the toggle dot add event listener and insert click event and also the arrow function. So once we click the toggle, then we add to the circle of class list and use here toggle method. Use here class name move. Alright, so if we click the button, it's moved to the right side. Also the background color will be changed, but actually the circle is not moving smoothly because we need to use transition in CSS file. In circle, use here transition. We need here all, then the duration will be 0.1 seconds. Also, I'm going to use one of the values transition timing function. I mean linear. So let's click again. And you see that it's worked now much better. So it's working fine. So let's change the color to dark mode when we toggle it the button. So let's create a couple of classes. So first of all will be dark 1. Let's assign a background color 1C2938. Then we need another dark color. Let's call the class name dark 2 and assign to it background color 10171E. Next, we have to create a class for the white color. Let's call the class name light and assign to it white color FFF. And finally, we need color for borders. Let's call the class name border color and set color border as 444. So now open HTML. Now we will assign the class name to the div class. So first let's find the feed snap. Press Ctrl F and in here type dark mode 1. Now copy this class and now search for feeds header. And paste here again. Next, search for header post. Also, we need the post. Then follow. Then model. Then finally we need sidebar. Alright, so we have prepared all the elements for the dark one. So in here, After the dark mode comments, create a new variable and call it dark elements1. Then I'm going to select those elements using query selector all method. Let's indicate here the class name darkmode1, which we have assigned to all the elements. Now you have selected all the elements. Now we will use a method called array.from. And inside of the parenthesis, select dark elements1. Now use map and inside of it type dark el1. And now use arrow function, which should take one parameter. So inside of this function write some block of code which then would be executed from each item. So we need here dark el1. Then we have to use property class list dot toggle. And inside of the parenthesis, let's indicate class dark1. So let's go ahead and test the button. Alright, cool, everything works fine. Now exact same way we need to do other elements of the page. So let's go ahead and search for those elements. The first one is going to be search bar input. In this case, we have to assign it a different class named darkmode2. Now copy this class. Next, we need to search for fits content. Then search for header post. So here we need to give a class in input element. After that, we need follow button. Follow btn. Actually, we see 4 of them. So let's go ahead and paste in each of follow btn. Next, come to follow footer. And finally, we need to add this class in model input. Alright, that's it. We have assigned. So now let's create another variable dark elements2. And in exact same way and select them using query selector all method. So now, like the previous one, we need to use same technique here. So copy this and paste it right here and just change the dark elements to dark2 and dark el to 2 and also in here, and also change the class name to dark2. So let's check it if this works or not. So if we click the button, then the elements get the dark color, but as you see this input is still white. And beside that, if we focus in input navigation, we see that background is white, and the same happens when we focus on post input. So let's fix this issue. So come to CSS, in dark2 give important. So now the problem is fixed. Alright, so let's go ahead and take care of the text in the page. For now they are dark. For that, let's use the same technique. Come to HTML and now search for search bar input. And now in class, put here the light text class. Then we need user link. Next comes header top. Now copy this class, write text. So now search for header top. In this case, in h4, assign a class write text. Then search for header post and assign it to the input element class write text. The next one is going to be post user info. It's include the heading and a span element. We need light text for both of them, so I'm going to assign the class in the parent element. Overall, we have 5 user info, so let's go ahead and assign the class to all of them. Next, we need the same for paragraph as well. So we have 5 paragraph, so we need to assign the class. After that, search for toggle heading. Then search for follow user info. So we have 4 of them, so let's assign the class name to all of them. Next comes sidebar header. Here we have to assign the class name to heading element. Then we need to search for sidebar user info. And then search for following. And finally, we have model input. Let's assign to it light text. Alright, so all the elements are ready. Now we need to select them. So let's create a variable and call it light text. And I'm going to select them using query selector all method. After that, we have to transform the node list to an array. And then we have to assign to its element class light. So we need array.from. Let's insert here inside of the parenthesis light text. Then we have to use function map and the parameter light text. And now at the block of code, we need light text dot block list dot toggle with class name light text, the exact same which we used before. So if we click the button, then the text gets light color. So everything works fine. So now let's change the border color. So come to HTML and search for search bar input and assign the class border. And now copy this class. So next one is header top. And then next search for header post. Also we need border for input element. Then I'm going to search for post. So we have 5 posts. So we need to assign to all of them class border. Then search for follow heading. And then search for follow user. So we have 4 of them. Paste all 4. Next comes model header. Then search for model input. So after that search for sidebar header. And finally we have sidebar list 1. Okay, so all the elements are prepared now. Now we have to select them and copy this variable and paste it, and then change the variable name and the class name. So variable name will be borders and class name will be border. And then again use array.from, or else just copy this and paste it here and just change the parenthesis and the class name. So it will be border. This is also be the border, and also this. And now change the class name border dash color. So save it. Now let's check. So let's click the dark mode. So as you see, the color of border is changed. So this is also having the same problem. So we need again use property called important. So let's assign to it in CSS class border color important. So let's check it again. So as you see, everything works perfectly. Next, let's make this responsive. So first, let's make the landing page responsive. So let's disable the feed page. Search for feed and give display none. And then make the main page display grid. Search for main page and assign here display grid. So down below, let's insert here new comments responsive. So in order to use media query, we need to use @sign. Then the key would be media followed by parenthesis. So insert here max with it, let's say 1300 pixel. Then again insert a new comment main page. Then select the middle content. So I'm going to set the UV as 60%. Then select footer list element. Then set flex wrap as wrap. Then select the align elements and assign a margin button 1 rem. Alright, so that's it about this screen size. Next, let's find another breakpoint. So once we make this screen size less than 1100 pixel, then we need to customize the page. So let's create another media query and specify max width as 1100 pixel. So let's go ahead and select the main page, then define grid template columns. So we need here one fractional unit. So as for the grid template rows, we need here repeat function, then 2 for 2 rows, and then one fractional unit. And then we need a third row. For that, use min content. And then select the right side, set it grid column at 1 and 2. Also same unit for grid row. And then change the width for the wrapper 70%. Also change the margin to auto. And now select the right content from and assign it display none. So as for the left part, it should take up second row. So we need here grid row with line number 2 and 3. Next select the left content and then change its width to 50%. Also change the margin to auto. So as for the footer, it should take up third row. Let's set it grid row property as 3 and 4 for now. Alright, so we need to small the heading element. So for that, let's select it. So let's select the class heading element and assign it with line height with value 3 rem. Okay, so that's it about this screen size. Now let's go ahead and find the next breakpoint. Give width 627 and height here 783, which is below 800 pixel. So now let's create a new media query with max width 500 pixel. So let's select the right part. So I'm going to make its width 80%. And next select the logo class, middle content, I. Then assign it display none. Then we need first heading element. Let's select it and set margin bottom as 2 rem. As for the second heading element, I'm going to assign margin bottom 1 rem. Okay, with right side we are done. Now let's work on the left content. Change its width to 60%. Alright, so with this breakpoint we are done. Now let's select another breakpoint. Width will be 525 and height will be 723. So this will be below 600. So let's select it. So first, so let's assign the media query. Max width will be 600 pixel. So first let's select the main page. Then define grid template rows and make it one fractional unit. Also give mean content. After that, let's hide the left part. So for that, select left assign with display none. So now let's select the right side and define grid row 1 and 2. And then change the width to 90%. Okay, so there is a problem. But first of all, let's reduce the breakpoint to below 500 pixel. And now let's fix the problem. So come to code. So this will be not columns, this will be rows. So now let's see. Alright, so now the problem is fixed. Now let's work on this breakpoint. So this time the media query will be max width 500 pixel. So select the first heading element and change its font size. Make it 2.5 rems. Alright, so that's it about the first page. Now let's work on login page. Let's change something on meta tag on HTML. We have to add here inside the meta tag. User dash scalable equal to no. So let's go and find some breakpoint. First, let's start with 1300 pixel. So the first thing we need to do is to decrease the list which is placed inside the navigation. So let's go ahead and inside the media query 1300 pixel, insert a new comment, login page. So select the element and set it with it as 80 rem. Next, we need to take care of the login. So select the element and set it with it as 80 rem. And finally, let's decrease the width of model. So select it and assign it to it. Width it will be 60 rem. Alright, so that's it about this breakpoint. So now let's create another breakpoint. This will be below 900 pixel. So first let's copy this. Now let's create a new media query. So the max width will be 900 pixel. Now paste this and just change the value. So this will be 60 rem and this login will be 60 rem and also the login model will be 50 rem. So with 900 pixel we are done. Now let's make screen size more smaller. So this will be below 700 pixel. So come to code. So let's create another media query, and this will be max with it 700 pixel. So paste it again, which we had copied earlier, and now change its value. The list with it value will be 50 RAM, and login with it value will be 50 RAM, and login model with it value will be 40 RAM. So this breakpoint is also complete. Now we will style below 600 pixel. So we already have 600 pixel media query. So just comment out login page, and then select the nav list, and change the width to 40 RAM, and then select the login and change the width to 40 RAM, and then define the grid template columns, and then give value 5 RAM and 8 fractional unit, and then select the level and change its font size to 1.4 RAM. Also change the font size of forget password link. To 1.4 RAM. And now select the footer and change the padding left to 5 RAM. And then change the paragraph p tag. The font size will be 1.4 RAM. And now select the login model and decrease its width to 30 RAM. And also select the I tag and change its top position to 2.5 RAM. And then select the p tag and decrease its font size to 1.4 RAM. So this breakpoint is also complete. Now let's work on another one. So this will be below 500 pixel. So let's change the screen size. So the media query is already present. So now let's comment out the login page. And then let's start by selecting nav list and change its width to 30 RAM. And then select the login and change its width to 30 RAM. Also define the grid template column to 2 RAM and 8 fractional unit. So now let's select the login for input. Then we will exclude the checkbox. So we have to use selector not, and inside of the parenthesis we have to indicate the class name login from checkbox. And now changes width to 20 RAM. And then select the link of forgot password and change it to display block. And also change the margin top to 1.5 RAM. So let's select the login footer and change its padding left to 2 rem. So it's little bit messed up here. So let's change it with it in nav list to 35 rem. So now let's check it. So now it looks fine. Also, this breakpoint is also complete. Now let's work on another breakpoint. This will be below 400 pixel. So let's resize the screen. Now let's create a new media query. Max width will be 400 pixel. Now let's comment out as login page and then select the login page and define read template columns. So let's use 2 rem and 2 fractional unit and again 2 rem. Now select the class login and change its width to 100%. And then change the login model to width 25 rem. Okay, so now let's change the width of the nav list. So let's select the class nav list and change its width to 31.5 rem. So now it's look fine. So this login page is complete now. So let's work on newsfeed page. So first of all, let's select a new breakpoint. So first we will select below 1600 pixel. So now let's create a new media query and give max with it 1600 pixel. Then insert here new comments, newsfeed page. Then select the div element class name dot follow. I'm going to set left and assign a value 58.5%. So that's it about this breakpoint. Now let's work on another breakpoint below 1300 pixel. So it's already created and we don't need to create again. So let's give a comment newsfeed page. And now select the class follow and just give left position 60%. Alright, so that's it about this breakpoint. So now create another breakpoint. This will be below 1100 pixel. So like the previous media query, this one also exists. So select the media query 1100 pixel and then in here give a comment newsfeed page. So in this screen size, we will hide search bar and who to follow. So select fit content and define Grid content column. We need min-max function with values 5 rem and 1 fractional unit. And as for the second column, assign a value to fraction and again give min-max 5 rem 1 fraction unit. Then hide the search bar with display none. Also hide the who to follow. So select the class and assign display none. So now select the post btn and assign lay position 80%. So this breakpoint is also complete. Now let's work on another breakpoint. So this will be below 700 pixel. So as usual, we already have the media query. So now let's add a comment here. Newsfeed content. So now let's select the class feed content and define grid template column and assign a value 1 fraction, and then select the class feeds header and define grid column and assign a value 1 and -1. Also in post class, we need to assign same grid column and the value will be 1 -1. Okay, so now we need to work on the post model. For that, let's select the class model and assign a widget with a value 90%. And then select the model img and assign a flat string property with a value 0. So now let's work on the post button. So for that, select the class and assign lay position with value 75%. And then select the font size to 1.8 rem. And then change the width to 11 rem. Also give some space with padding top and bottom 1.2 rem and left and right 0.8 rem. Alright, now let's work on the sidebar. So we will decrease the space and width and the font size in both lists. So let's go ahead and select both of them simultaneously. Actually, we have to separate the selector with comma. So use here margin bottom 1.5 rem. Okay, so that's it about this breakpoint. Let's work on another breakpoint. So this will be below 600 pixel. So insert here a new comments, new split page. First of all, I'm going to hide the name of the user and also the arrow. So let's select the class user A with comma user I and give display none. Next, let's take care of the input element. So select the class header post input and change the width value 27 rem. Alright, now let's work on the post itself. So first, let's customize the text. So select the class post text, change the width to 90%, and also change the width of the post img. So select it and assign width with the value 90%, and also change the height to 25 rem. Also select the post button class and change its left position to 78%. So now this breakpoint is also complete. Now let's work on 500 pixel. So first of all, let's comment inside here newsfeed page, then decrease its space between icons. So let's select it and then change the margin right to 5 rem. So now select the header image wrapper. So we will hide the image in the breakpoint. So for that, assign display none, and then decrease the input width of the header. So assign the value 20 rem. So now select the class header post and change its width to 20 rem. So now let's decrease the size of the post. So let's select it and change the padding to 1 rem. So after that, let's small the size of the user avatar. So let's select it and change its width and height to 4 rem, and also decrease the space of margin right to 1 rem. Okay, so now everything is looking good. Now let's work on another breakpoint. This will be below 400 pixel. So let's insert here a new comment, newsfeed page. So first, let's decrease the size of the icon. So select them and change its font size to 2 rem. So now select the link element and assign the margin right to 1 rem to decrease the space between the icons. Now let's select the user and assign margin left to 1 rem. Also select the header post input and decrease its width to 16 rem. And then select the header post icon and decrease its font size to 2 rem. Now select the post icon I class and decrease the space with margin right 4 rem. and then select the post button class and assign lay position to 60%. So this breakpoint is complete now. So now I think the project is now complete. Okay, so we need to fix something in 500 pixel media query. In header post, we need to assign here justify content center, not with it. So let's see. So now the project is complete. And this responsive is also looking good and working fine. Okay, so I will give the source code in the link in the description so you can download. And also please subscribe my channel. And if you did like this video, please give a like and share and comment. Thank you.